It's totally possible to increase your credit score from 700 to 800 or even from 600 to 800 all by yourself. Don't get scammed into paying exorbitant fees to questionable credit repair companies. You can do it yourself, and really it's quite easy once you know how credit scores work. To maximize your credit score, avoid these top 5 mistakes that we'll talk about in this video. So let's start. The biggest mistake is missing payments and paying late. How big of a problem is this exactly? To answer this, it's best we go to the source. Credit bureaus or credit reporting agencies are agencies that calculate your credit score. The two main ones in Canada are Equifax and TransUnion. By the way, this video is about credit scores in Canada, but the general principles will apply to the US and other countries as well. Equifax and TransUnion have similar but slightly different ways of calculating your credit score. So depending on which credit reporting agency your lender, mortgage lender for example, accesses, they can get a slightly different score. In the Equifax scoring model, there are 5 main factors that influence your credit score, and your payment history accounts for 35%, which is a lot. Now, TransUnion might have a slightly different weighting, but in general, the same things will matter to them. Basically, credit scores are a tool for lenders and creditors to identify good and bad borrowers. If your credit score is low, which means below 660 or even below 600, it signals to the lenders that you might not be able to pay them back, so they may either not approve you for a mortgage or give you a mortgage but with bad terms, for example, a higher interest rate. If your credit score is higher, above 660, or even excellent, which is above 760, it signals to the lenders that you were responsible with credit in the past, so they will more likely approve you and may even give you better rates. So how many missed payments will make a bad credit score? We don't know exactly, but one thing is sure. The more often you miss a payment, the more negatively it will affect your credit score. But paying your credit card late can be just as bad. Credit reporting agencies look at how often you miss payments. Was it just a one-off or the last 3 payments? How much those payments were? Meaning if you miss a large payment, the consequence may be bigger, and if you made late payments, how late your payments were. Being 2 months late is likely worse than just 1 day. You can make the whole thing worse if you have a lot of credit counts, let's say 5 credit cards, and you're late on all of them every other month. So how to fix this? As we don't know exactly how credit bureaus calculate credit scores, the best thing to do is this. Always pay your credit cards and loan repayments on time and in full. If right now you're carrying a credit card balance or you're late on a payment, make it a priority to pay those off first, in full, before spending money on anything else, even investing. Put that on hold. Now, once you start doing this, your credit score will gradually improve. But how long will it take to see improvements? We don't know the exact calculations for this, but in general, it depends on how much of an increase you're targeting. If you just need your credit score to go up by a bit, with some small tweaks, it can happen within a few months. But if you need your credit score to go up much higher, let's say by 150 or even 200 points, then it could take a few years. Now, you might be wondering how you can know if your credit score is improving, and there are 2 ways. One is you can get your credit score from Equifax or TransUnion. But be careful, because if you sign up to their credit score monitoring, you will be charged a monthly subscription fee. Instead, what you can do is request a free report. According to federal law in Canada, you are entitled to get 1 free copy of your credit report each year from the 2 main credit bureaus, Equifax and TransUnion. The other way to get your credit score is from free online services like Borrowell and Credit Karma. You just need to sign up, and then you can see your credit score online whenever you want. They also calculate it slightly differently, but if you sign up for both, you'll get a good idea of your score. And remember, what matters is that your credit score constantly improves. Now let's move on to another mistake that will negatively impact your credit score, which is too high credit utilization. In Equifax's scoring model, credit utilization counts for 30% of your total credit score. Now, what is credit utilization? Credit utilization is basically how much of your available credit you are using. Specifically, revolving credit, meaning credit where you can repeatedly borrow up to a certain amount, pay it, and then borrow again, like with a credit card or a line of credit. Let's say you only have 1 credit card with a credit limit of $5,000. If you put $1,000 on that credit credit card, your credit utilization ratio is 1,000 divided by 5,000 equals 20%. But you need to take into account all of your debt and all of your limits on all your revolving credit. So let's say you also have a second credit card B with a limit of $8,000 and a balance of $2,000 on it. First, we add up all the credit card balances, which is $3,000, then divided by the total credit limit, which is $13,000. That equals 23%. In general, keep your credit utilization ratio under 30%. If your credit score is already good and you want to boost it further, try to reduce it even more to 20 or even 10%. And there are two main ways to do this. One is to simply pay off the balance on your credit cards. The second one is increase your credit card limit. If you notice that you regularly spend $3,000 each month on your card, you can easily lower your utilization ratio by applying for a higher credit limit. But warning, only do this if you don't have any problems paying your credit card off in the first place. Otherwise, a high credit limit could just entice you to spend more money. But what about a 0% utilization ratio, meaning you don't use your credit card at all? This is also not very useful to improve your credit score. After all, the lenders want to see that you have a good history with credit, meaning that you applied for credit, got credit, and paid it back responsibly. So make sure you do use your credit card regularly. And connected to this is mistake number 3, which is not having enough credit history. Some people, especially newcomers to Canada, make the mistake of not using credit at all, thinking that it's better for their credit score. And it kind of makes sense, right? If I always use cash or debit, it means that I'm reliable, so my credit score should be great. But it doesn't work that way. To even come up with a credit score, Equifax or TransUnion need to see how you've handled credit in the past. And in Equifax's scoring model, this makes up 15% of your credit score. So what is credit history actually? It's a section in your credit files that states how long you've had your credit accounts. For example, credit card A opened since 10 years ago. Credit card B, 5 years. Credit card C, 3 years. So lenders don't just want to see that you were responsible with credit, but also for how long your experience with credit is, or also called the age of your credit. So if you only had one credit card for 6 months, naturally your credit score would be lower because you haven't had the time to prove how responsible you were with it. It's a bit like when you're first dating someone and find out they've never been in a long-term relationship before. One thing you might be wondering is, if I have several credit cards, will it negatively affect my score if I close one or two? I'd say that it's less of a negative effect, but rather that by closing your cards, they will stop contributing to your credit score. You don't want to close so many cards that you're only left with, let's say, one card that you just opened 3 months ago, because then the average age of your credit will go down over time. Although this will not happen immediately. Credit bureaus will usually keep the record of your closed card for 6 to 10 years before dropping it from their records. After that, you can see the real impact of your closed cards. But if you're having trouble managing the payments of multiple credit cards, resulting in you overusing them, being late, or missing out on payments, then closing one could still be a good idea. In general, you need to have enough credit history to show lenders that you were responsible with credit over a longer time period. The next mistake is something not many people know of, which is having bad public records in your credit history. And this makes up 10% of your credit score in Equifax's scoring model. Not a lot, but when it comes to maximizing your credit score, you want to make sure that you've covered all of your bases. So what's a bad public record? The official term is derogatory public records. I know it sounds scary, which mainly include things like bankruptcy, foreclosure, or collection, meaning repayment problems. And you might say, but I don't have any of those problems, so why bother? Here's the problem. Derogatory public records are recorded in your credit report, and sometimes the credit bureaus make faulty entries. Ouch. But it's on you to identify them and get them removed. I know it sucks. So that's why it's a good idea to get your credit reports so you can have a look at them and see if everything's all right. You can get them for free once a year anyway, so why not do it if you sense there's a problem with your credit score? Your credit report will list your name, social insurance number, credit accounts, payment history, and so on. A mistake could, for example, be a credit account that you've never applied for, or an incorrect report about missing payments. If you identify mistakes, you want to make sure to ask them to remove it. Also know that you can get negative entries removed after some time. For example, entries about missed payments older than 7 years, and even bankruptcy entries after 10 years. The next mistake is something that can be easily avoided, which is too many credit inquiries. And this accounts for 10% of your credit score. Nowadays, you can see credit card and loan offers everywhere, and it seems so harmless to just apply for this card and that card in the hopes that one gets approved. But remember that each time you apply for a credit card or a loan, it will usually result in what's called a hard inquiry, when a lender or a creditor checks your credit report to decide whether or not they'll approve you. Now, if you get too many hard inquiries in a row, it will lower your credit score, at least temporarily. Does that mean that you shouldn't apply for credit? No. If let's say you apply for a credit card in October, resulting in a hard inquiry, your credit score may go down by 5 to 10 points, but only temporarily. After a few months, your credit score can bounce back again if you maintain good credit habits like paying your bill on time and so on. Just make sure that you don't go overboard with those credit card applications. And there's one more thing that's not mentioned a lot, but that can affect your credit score, which is credit mix. It doesn't affect your credit score as much as the other 5 things, but it's worth looking at. So what's credit mix? This refers to the different types of credit accounts that you have. So there's not just credit cards, but also mortgages, installment loans, and even what's called open accounts. For example, postpaid mobile phone plans. Lenders and creditors in general like to see that you have a mix of different kinds of loans. For example, 2 credit cards, a postpaid phone plan, and an installment loan, all in good standing, of course, and this is just an example, rather than just one credit card over a longer period of time, because that gives them a more complete picture of how you deal with different kinds of credit. Depending on which scoring model is used, credit mix will be more or less important, but if you're serious about squeezing out every little additional score that you can get, then you might want to pay attention to this. Now, with so many credit cards on the market, it can be really difficult to know which one is the best for you. For credit cards that offer the highest cashback on your grocery spending, watch this video next.